Stop looking at my legs.
But
I'll look directly at your mid-thigh.
All right. That's gonna
making
be
it
good.
uncomfortable.
Okay.
What?
Made it uncomfortable.
You're listening to the Janchi Show, hosted by 3 Korean American adoptees diving headfirst into what it means to be adopted, Korean, American, and more. And now, here's your hosts, Nathan, Patrick, and KJ.
Welcome back to the Janchi Show, everyone. It is your boys, KJ, Nathan. No, God. Welcome back to the Janchi Show, everyone. It's your boys, KJ, Nathan, and Patrick, back in the saddle for what feels like the first time in a very long time. How you doing, everyone?
Been a week.
It's been 1 week since you looked at me.
Oh, yeah, I guess it's true. It's been a week.
On the Zencaster screen.
For the... Nice. It's been a week since we were all doing an intro together, but we're here for the full episode.
Yeah,
so
that's
for
true.
the listeners at home, this is your first fully collected package of the Feisty Boys plus guest. None of this like subbing in and out business. So yeah,
No more twos.
no
more twos.
for at least this Wednesday. After that, who knows?
Just
I was
this
gonna
time.
Well, then you
No
guys will
promises.
be tuning it up this week, though, by yourselves without me. So,
We have to
Is
do
that
it
true?
too by ourselves.
well, yeah.
That's
All right.
off air conversation.
It's fine. We have our stuff together.
I'm doing well.
maybe
I am doing
people
well.
want the behind the scenes. I don't know.
I don't think they. I don't
was
think they want
actually-
this much behind the scenes.
It's funny. I was literally thinking, like, what are we going to talk about on this intro? And I was like, maybe we should just do the behind the scenes where we figure out the information
The live
for
show?
the live show. If we
Like,
we just workshop it on the intro.
Yeah, and then everyone
No.
can call in with their opinions. 972-677-8867.
That's funny.
That's fine. Oh, wait, actually, while we're doing this, Patrick, how do you say ROOF?
I say roof.
You say roof. Okay. I think so. Here's the
Roof.
deal. I think Nathan, we've talked about this too much now that if you were to say it, you get in your head about it. It's not going to be honest anymore.
I probably would.
Roof.
So,
I can
yeah.
say it either way,
Right. Depends on how fast you're saying it, right?
but I also know that we have one person leave a voicemail where they said it, and that may or may not have been me.
I think we're
Spoiler
stretching
alert.
this. I think we're stretching this out way too long. Is what I think.
I don't think so. I wasn't here, so I technically need caught up. Even though from context clues, I know exactly what the conversation
we
is.
can go over a lot of words.
it wasn't
I'm
a
sure that we
conversation.
all
It was a
say
singular
differently.
moment in time.
One single
So-
moment in time. One shining moment.
Nice.
All right. Anyways, we are the Janchi Show. Did we already say that?
Right. No, we
I think we did. I think we rolled
we have
in.
not. Definitely have not.
Yeah, you did. You rolled in.
We're
You
the Janchi
introduced
Show.
all
What
of
does
us.
what does Janchi mean?
Janchi means to feast. And we also say that it means to celebrate, because what we do on the show is that we feast together at the end of the show. But during the show, we celebrate our shared heritages as Korean American adoptees, sometimes with a guest, sometimes by ourselves, sometimes with only 2 of us. But that is what Janchi means.
Sometimes
for all
with
of
a
you
Chinese
new-
adoptee.
Sometimes with a Chinese adoptee.
Or sometimes by
Sometimes
herself.
with somebody who's not even adopted one time.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right.
Real early on in the show. Yes,
Amazing.
but that's what that means for all you new listeners out there. Thank you again for tuning in, or for tuning in for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Do we have? I mean, I don't really have a lot to intro. Is there anything we want to like get into before we jump into the introduction? I'll cut this part out if we need to.
Nathan, why don't you give them a quick rundown of what we did last year and what we are planning to do this year for the details that we currently have.
Well, Janchi Live essentially was a collection of people coming together and just having a good time with the show, having a little live podcast, a little Korean barbecue, and then afterwards we even did a little noraebang,
Which is karaoke for the uninitiated.
Korean karaoke, yeah. Those
Well, it's
two.
not. I mean, I guess it is a whole different type of karaoke.
It's-
I was going to say
it's
it's not
Korean.
Korean karaoke, but it literally it is. Korean karaoke is its own thing, but in Korean, the
Could you
word
call it
for-
Korean lip syncing? No, because it's not even lip sync; it's real singing.
Because you're singing it out loud.
Yeah.
Is it like just cover? Is there like an actual name that's not karaoke, or is that like
Yeah,
the-
noraebang.
noraebang.
Well, no, I mean, like, is there another? I don't know.
Oh, like
I
an
don't
English
even know how
term?
to ask the question.
Is there
Not
an
even
English
an English
word?
term. I don't know
right?
what is like
Yeah.
the root of it. Like karaoke, was that first, or
I mean, that's
who was the
Japanese.
first person to be like, I'm going to sing the Backstreet Boys
cover
yeah with just the music?
I mean, I've always known it as just as karaoke.
I think KJ's put his producer hat on, is looking it up right now.
I googled it. Korean noraebang translates to English karaoke, which is entirely helpful.
There you go. So
So maybe if I go to karaoke to Japanese, it will, and then
Where's
back
the
to
origin?
English.
Yeah, that sounds too talented. Either way, it's a good time. We sang, we drank. It was fun.
And why did we get together? I don't think that you said.
Well, I mean, it was our 1-year anniversary of the show. And so this year it'll be the 2-year anniversary of the show. And
I mean, kind of. It's significantly later.
It's a little
than our
after
anniversary.
2 years, sure. Yeah. But
give a few weeks.
But I mean, honestly, the fun thing about the podcast, that one thing that we've talked about specifically, is when we do the podcast, we just have ourselves to look at. We never actually look at the listeners, the people who are,
You mean like physically?
Yeah,
okay.
physically in the same room.
I was like, what do you mean? We have guests on a lot. Like we examine stories all the time.
I'm talking about the listeners.
Live studio audience.
I'm talking about the other hundreds of people that may be listening.
The tens
right now.
of people who show
The
up.
tens of people.
The tens of people.
So that, I think, was the neat part for me, is seeing people actually looking at us while we're talking, and just explaining our journey and the past year of the show. And this year we haven't really discussed what we're going to talk about in our live discussion, but still, I think it's just a good time to, maybe we'll have more Q&A, maybe we'll be having a panel, maybe we'll we really haven't discussed the actual details, but either way, it will be live, as in the people that are attending. It'll be live.
It will be a live recording of a Janchi Show podcast,
We
followed
will be
by dinner.
alive.
We will be
and
alive
potentially
and alive.
noraebang.
Yeah.
So
Potentially
yeah.
no.
And
Yeah,
it's
we
in
don't have a
Dallas.
theme.
It's in October. Yeah,
October
we're not-
22nd.
we're not
We
theme
talked
people.
about it a little bit at the end of the interview, but it's good to throw it out here, I think. The
Yeah,
more we
Trust
talk
me,
about
trust
it.
us when we say in September, you'll be hearing a lot about it.
Yeah.
which is next
because-
week.
That's next week.
Well, we want to give
No,
everyone
the
enough time.
31st
That's why.
is next week.
Yeah.
Oh, flip.
Oh, wait.
Okay.
Yes. No?
Yeah.
Math. I don't know. It's fine.
I'm going to redact. Cut that.
All right. It's fine. Great.
All
Nathan, not Nathan. Patrick. I in my mind. Whatever. Patrick.
Not
my
Patrick.
name.
Tell us who we're interviewing today.
Sure. So today we are interviewing the Honorable Mayor Jenna Antoniewicz. Ooh, about got me there.
All rise for the Honorable Mayor Jenna. That's what you do for mayors, right?
100%.
Well,
You
I mean,
clap.
It's like all
I
rise. Jenna.
That would be her theme.
Stretch.
If she were to
Yeah,
have
alright.
one, it would be more the home
That's
run
true.
than
Home
the
run Jenna.
claps.
Perfect.
Yes, but this was a really fantastic interview. I think for us all three of us being together for the first time for a guest in a long time, I think she was a perfect guest. Someone who has listened to a lot of the show, but also came in just
Oh yeah, immediately throwing shade.
immediate
Just, yeah.
shade. But it was honestly a lot of fun, a lot of laughs, and honestly some good serious talk that we ended up having near the end. Not that it's not serious throughout the interview, but no, it was a lot of fun. She shares a lot of different things that I don't want to spoil here, and I honestly feel like we didn't have enough time.
Mhm.
That's true.
Jenna is a
Yeah.
guest I would love to have back on. Not that I wouldn't love to have all of our guests back on, but recency bias is telling me that I would really enjoy having Jenna back on the show to talk about more things. So, yeah, I don't know. Did you guys have any thoughts or anything before we roll in?
No.
Alrighty then. I know
Trying to
she's
think of
laughing
something.
right now listening
I
to
know.
this. So, without further ado,
The interview
here is
speaks
our
for itself.
conversation with the Honorable Mayor Jenna Antoniewicz. Roll it. Welcome back, everybody, to the Janchi Show interview portion, because I feel like that's how I've heard Wes introduce this part in the last couple of times. Anyways, we have a really great guest today. I'm gonna sit down. I've been standing up for the listeners. I've been standing up, and I'm gonna sit down now. Anyways,
Lasted 5 seconds.
I'm training for that. I'm training for that half marathon.
Training for the half marathon right
My
there.
legs are tired.
Good job. Almost
okay. Anyways,
Today
this
he
is all
ran
great.
1.5 mile.
That was yesterday. I got 2 miles coming up tomorrow.
Oh,
Today's
all
the
right.
rest day.
Sorry.
Anyways,
This is a terrible intro.
This is
sorry.
a perfect intro. For a perfect intro for a perfect guest. Today we have someone who has been a fan of the show for a little while, and we've been connected on the socials, I think, for a little while after that. And we've had some conversations, and I know she's been a big fan of the show, but it's very exciting for us to now have her on as the guest of honor. Please welcome the Honorable Mayor Jenna Antoniewicz. Jenna, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, guys. Long-time listener, first-time caller, you know.
Long time, first time.
Hey,
I
fan
like
of the
it.
show. We're a fan of you. I mean, come on.
We are a fan of you.
I mean,
Nathan, why are we a fan of the Honorable Mayor here?
Well, other than the fact that she is our first mayor or public official, I guess you could say, we think it's
Is
just...
that true?
I think it's true. I don't know. I'm still very impressed by that. When we first started communicating many months ago, and you said, "Actually, I know another CAD mayor," and we were like, "What? There's another one." So
There's at least 2 of us in Pennsylvania.
wow, I think that's great.
Well, wasn't the first time that you reached out to any of us an email to the show directly?
Probably. Yeah, I get real excited about things.
I feel like I remember Nathan messaging us and goes, "We just got an email from a mayor." or something like that. I was like, okay.
Interesting.
Hilarious. Well, Jenna, it's a big honor for us to have you on the show. And as you well know, we like to start the show by asking our guests to share as little or as much as you want about your adoption story. I feel like we got to come up with a better way of describing that. Anyways.
No,
The
long version is share your adoption story in your own words because it's your story without any of the, you know what I mean? We want adoptees to own and claim their own stories and not feel the need to start with, I was adopted from, or my parents, or like anything, just to center themselves in their own story. Cause I feel like adoptees have a taught habit to not center themselves in their own stories, or to tell their stories from like a third person, you know what I mean? So it's like, own your story. If you want to take forever to tell your story, great. If you want to take no time at all to tell your story, also great.
Should we just start over? I don't.
We'll cut it all out. It's fine.
Yeah,
It's fine.
It's editing.
We're going to leave it all in.
Yeah.
I just want to say I'm so excited to be here with all the 3 of you. You don't know this, but you have been so important in my journey over the past a little over a year now. So it's been really exciting to just be here with all of you. So thank you for having me on the show. I am the one who is honored. I can call all of you the honorable.
Whoa.
We all know that my ego will accept
Yeah,
that.
I know.
So.
What did I say? His head's getting bigger, folks.
Patrick, sit down.
Patrick's like, that's one title I haven't explored
used
yet.
yet.
I think I need to
have not
stand for
explored that title
myself.
yet. That's true. All right, enough about me.
Hopefully by the end of this interview, you will all choose to run for public office. We'll get to that though, guys. We'll get to that. My adoption story though is quite a bit different than if you had asked me a year ago. And so there's really 2. There's the one, I like how KJ was framing that. You know, we oftentimes put ourselves in the third person perspective. So if I was going to tell that story, I was born in 1983. I was 11 months old when I arrived at JFK International Airport. My parents came to get me, and it was 1984. At the time, they lived in New Jersey. Those were some very dark years. I'm just kidding. For all those Jersey people. Very kidding. We moved to Pennsylvania.
We love you, Jersey.
Love you, Jersey. My husband's from New Jersey, so I always feel like I'm allowed to poke fun at New Jersey. I grew up in very rural Pennsylvania. We were actually only about an hour and a half outside of Philadelphia, but, you know, lots of cows, lots of cornfields. I have an older brother, he's my parents' biological son. He's quite a bit older. He's 8 years older. Had a great childhood. They were looking back. I had to write them like a note to really own that I took a lot for granted. You know, they offered, hey, do you want to go learn Korean at a Korean church? They sent me to Holt International Heritage Camp, which at the time I just was going with the flow and you're kayaking and you're doing arts and crafts and you're meeting all your friends and
You're
you have a
tipping
crush on all
cows.
the
You're
boys.
saying hello to the grass. You're,
exactly.
You're not Philadelphia things. The big city.
You're not thinking about the fact that I am seeing all of these Korean adoptees who are in their 20s and they're our counselors and they're normalizing it for us. And I'm meeting all of these CADs who are still lifelong friends. I'm in touch with so many of them still. And you take it for granted. And now looking back, I know that really probably centered me in a way that I didn't realize at the time. So that was cool. And yeah, just sort of went through the rest of my life, not really thinking about being Korean, making jokes about it, doing the whole thing, until about a year ago. So that's the story I would have told you a year ago. And jumping into my, first person perspective, I was born in Mokpo. I never knew that. That was the first thing that I ever found out about myself that I didn't know. I always assumed I was born in Seoul. It's mostly just because I didn't look at my paperwork closely. It actually says Mokpo Reception Center. But when you don't know Korean or anything about Korea, you're just like, oh, that's another random word. Cool. So Seoul was the only word that I knew, right? And I was born in Mokpo. My parents were not married, which didn't seem to really bother anyone in the family when I met them this summer. But what happened was I was born, my appa was working as a laborer, it's, big fishing city, right? Lots of seafood. And I believe he was also living with my aunts, his younger sisters. I think they were helping to take care of me. I think his mom was helping to take care of me. And my birth mom had some pretty severe postpartum depression. So her mom, worried about her daughter, took her away. And my appa said he never saw her ever again. So there he is. He's 25-ish. I'm, 2 months old. And he did his best for about 6 or 7 months. And a neighbor told him, I think it probably went down like they saw him struggling and they said, there's a children's reception center nearby. They'll help take care of her. So he took me there in April of 1984. And in that September is when I came to the United States. So it was pretty cool going to Mokpo and seeing the reception center, and we'll get into all of that. But
yeah, massive spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Massive spoiler. I know.
Oh gosh.
Well, just another something to unpack later in the interview, because I feel like there's a lot here and a lot in your story. And actually, one thing I was thinking about as I was hearing you talk about this, and we talked a little bit before we hopped on the recording about how our journeys are kind of mirrored each other's a little bit in the way that we've kind of went about having what would generally be described as a positive adoption experience, but then opening or coming out of the fog, as we will, and going through that. And I was thinking like, oh, but you've also gone back to Korea and had a reunion. And I'm like, so you're on almost an accelerated path in comparison to mine. Like where I'm talking about sprinting, you've literally hopped in the jet plane, read the pilot's manual, and went Mach 4, which I think is absolutely incredible, especially because you are a very public-facing official. But we'll get into that later. There was one thing in the early part of your story I wanted to talk about first, and that was you talked about being at the Holt camps and building relationships and friendships with other adoptees there. Now, and you said this was part of your kind of what I would call part of your rejection phase, where you weren't really thinking about your identity in that way. That's how I describe mine. Probably not everyone describes it that way, but looking back, did you realize, or do you think that y'all ever had conversations about the fact that you were building community in that way? Or was it purely just a friendship, we're all friends type of scenario?
Oh yeah, I have no recollection of any of us ever sitting down and saying, the reason we're here is because
Sure.
We have gathered here today for the purposes of discussing.
Really, it was, we were more focused on, which girls were in which cabin and are they going to be nice to us? And that boy's cute over there. I mean, that purely the only thing I can really remember, because I was one of 2 Asian Americans in my high school, very, very, very small rural high school. And I didn't know she was adopted from China until probably a few years ago. Like she and I were very close and we never talked about the fact that we were both adopted. I think maybe we just assumed. Yeah, there was sort of never any of that purposeful connecting. the only thing I remember from camp is hearing in the periphery somebody say, this is the only week I can come to a place where I'm around other people where I don't have to explain myself. Whoever that person was, who was 11, 12, 13, was super mature in thinking about this. And I do remember hearing that and having a moment. And it obviously really stuck with me because I still remember it now. I mean, for better or worse, I had a really positive experience growing up. I don't know if it's because I just had the unearned self-confidence. If somebody was teasing me, I just ignored it and just didn't, it didn't absorb or what. But I'm sure people made comments. My parents did a really good job at really grounding me to just they were real simple about it. We love you. You're our daughter. The end, which there wasn't a lot of nuance there, but I think when you're 2, 3, 4, elementary school, middle school, you do just want to know that your parents love you, right? So,
Right.
So yeah, that's the only thing I remember from camp. I think we had more conversations as we got older. I was on the AOL Instant Messenger with like my, my friends from camp. I think you aged out at like 15 from that camp. So I really kept in touch with a lot of people, through the rest of high school, through college. And I just got together with a girl a couple of months ago who we, and back then we were like literal pen pals too. We didn't start emailing until later. And so I know you're not ageist on the show, but I love when you guys are talking and Nathan will be like, well, I didn't have the internet growing up. And you guys are like, what?
The encyclopedias.
I mean, you already mentioned AOL online, and I was like, yeah, I used to get those discs, those CDs.
Oh my God, I forgot about the discs. I just threw away a bunch of them. Oh my gosh.
So took me back for a second.
So anyway, but that was a very long answer to your question, Pat. That's how this whole interview, you're going to ask me one question. I'm going to go on for 20 minutes. You'll have to cut me off. I apologize.
We would never
cut you off because you are the Honorable Mayor Antoniewicz.
All rise.
Thank you.
No, that wasn't for you.
Right. Sorry. I'm very much centering myself
you called
in
Patrick
all interviews.
honorable one time, and he thinks all applause is for him. Oh my gosh.
I suck. Anyways. On the flip side of that, I guess, you talked about being one of 2 Asian Americans in your school, but you were able to go to these camps, and you also talked about your parents actively asking, do you want to go to language school or do certain different things? Were those your only attempts or forays into culture as well, or were there other ways for you to access culture growing up too that kind of kept you a little bit more tied together or tied to that community?
That's another great question. No, when I tell you that we lived in the middle of nowhere, it was a good 20, 25 minutes to go get a gallon of milk, unless you wanted to milk it yourself, which I was not equipped to do. We were really, we had to have been an hour and a half from the closest Korean restaurant. And so funny story that we used to, quote unquote, make a Korean meal at the end of camp, right? So, it was a camp in the middle of the woods. They're trying to make bulgogi. I don't know how successful it was. My parents used to bring me an Italian hoagie because I just wasn't into it. They would bring me, after a couple of years at camp, they're like, we'll just bring Jenna a sandwich.
That sounds like what my parents would have done.
Exactly.
Just bring him something else. He's not going to eat that. Just bring him something else.
We appreciate all you do, but it's not worth it.
I know. So funny. In 3rd grade, and this is a really fond memory for me, my teacher put together this unit on Korean culture. And, they brought in kimchi, and I have all these pictures of, us trying to use chopsticks and all these things. And I think as a 3rd grader, you're just thinking, what a coincidence that this happened. And, and of course, looking back, I know my mom was obviously really integral and I don't know where she went to get this kimchi, but she helped my teacher plan it with a friend of hers. And so there's just she was real low key modest about stuff like that. And then when I was a senior in high school, I think I did my senior project on Korean culture, trying to find, what a hanbok was and things like that, just real base level. And then I didn't really think about it, like you, Patrick, I was a creative writing major in school, and people would be writing about all kinds of revelations and things. You know, you're 19, so
Right.
everyone's real dramatic, and
The world is new, and also you are new in the world. Yes.
Yeah, and I think, you know, so my professors and stuff would say, like, so really, Jenna, you don't have anything to write about? And I'd be like, no, you know, I you know, this and that, and and I, you know, probably even a couple of years ago, if you had asked me, I would have said, yeah, I don't know what I would write about if I was going to write about.
I got nothing.
I got nothing. Yeah, it's so this fog thing. Yeah, it's real, guys. The fog is very real.
So I think that's actually really, really interesting because I feel like I remember kind of interactions with professors that were similar. Like they might have been trying to fish that information out of me, like realizing, oh, I think he's got more to say than what he's letting on, even though I was trying to write all kinds of weird stuff. Anyways, but I think it's really interesting because, you know, you're moving through the fog, but you've had kind of some of these interactions, like you did the project about Korea and things like that. So I'm wondering, did you feel like you were able to identify as Asian or Korean American while you were growing up, and then moving through like going to college and leading up to this point of like self-discovery and moving out of the fog for the first time? Do you feel like you were able to identify as Asian, or did you feel like that wasn't part of your identity that you fully connected with?
I feel like I identified with it adjacently, not real directly. As you know, it's just such a weird thing to be raised by white people, but know that you are Asian and Korean.
Sure.
So like I knew that, but, you know, feeling real imposter syndrome whenever I would see a group of Asians, if we would go to the city, and just sort of like stepping away thinking, well, I hope people don't think that I'm with them, because I wouldn't know how to act. I wouldn't know how to act
Sure.
Korean enough. And I didn't know what that was all about. Like just feeling very uncomfortable in that space and not really able to articulate why until recently. So, you know, I did the whole thing in college. I went to a very small, predominantly white college in central Pennsylvania. We had an Asian student coalition that I joined. But there was a lot of folks from international students. There was like 9 of us, right, who really got involved in this. So yeah, like being interested in other cultures, being interested in myself, sort of. My therapist says that this is all pretty normal because you're just in survival mode for your life. You know, you're just trying to make it through elementary school. You're trying to get through the awkward years of your teenagerhood. You're trying to find a partner. Now I'm trying to raise
you're
kids.
trying to teenagerhood.
Yeah, trying to teenage, you know?
Yes.
So who has time and space to really sit down and think critically about this until something happens and triggers it? And it's going to sound really silly, but you know, it was during lockdowns, and I couldn't keep myself busy doing all the things. I recognized that about myself. I really had to challenge myself to, Jenna, it's okay to not be busy. You can just sit. Have any of y'all ever had this? Like,
yes.
That's okay. You don't have to be busy. It's all right. It's okay if you're not accomplishing something. So, you know, I'm listening to podcasts. This was before I found yours. And this had nothing to do with
How dare you listen to other podcasts?
I know. How dare I? I didn't even know you existed back then. I can't believe it.
I don't know that we did exist back
I was
then.
gonna say we might not have.
We're not quite old enough. Yeah.
If it was like right at the beginning of the pandemic, did not exist.
We did not exist.
See, I have a great excuse, guys. I have a great excuse.
Very true. Very true. All right, pass. Giving you the pass.
But I'm listening to this podcast, and it had nothing to do with adoption. They were just talking about families. And I really have to go back because I quote this guy so often, and he has no idea that he launched this journey for me. But he said something like, I realized, how could I truly know myself if I've never explored this part of my story? And like all of these bombs just went off in my brain, you know, and it just connected for me, like just hearing that one line. And it just started me rolling. I mean, at the same time, you didn't ask, I'll just tell you. But at the same time, all of the...
I like it.
Yeah, just take an initiative, guys.
Yeah,
that's why they call me the Honorable. So at the same time, it was around, it was around during all of the Stop AAPI hate. And I'll just throw it out there that it was a really weird time for me because suddenly everyone in the county that I live in in the general greater Philadelphia area were very interested that I was a Korean mayor. They didn't care before that. They don't care again. But for like 2 months, all the news stations wanted to interview me. And here I am in this like, okay, I got to go speak on behalf of the Asian American Pacific Islander community. That's great. And looking back, I think I probably said all the right things. I was certainly passionate about it. I got together with some colleagues to put together a statement, and we worked with our county commissioners, and we already had an anti-discrimination ordinance in my borough. We're doing all the things. We're putting in the work. We're trying to be front facing to our community to say here, all these things. But I don't know that I really truly, I know I didn't truly embrace what it meant. So somebody asked me if I would put together a vigil for our side of the county. So then I did, like 150, 200 people came. It was a great opportunity to share stories and just take up some space. It was wonderful. And I didn't know this organization existed at the time, but it's the Korean American Association of Greater Philadelphia. For that event that your last guest, that's where he and I met. Shout out, Paul.
Shout out, Paul. We've never met, but I'm shouting you out. I've never met him.
I'm there at this event, and this small white church bus of Korean elders pulls up, and like 30 Korean elders get out of the bus. They come down, they surround me. They don't know it's me yet. And my now friend Sharon, she's the president of the organization, said something in Korean. And she pointed at me, and everybody went like in unison, they're clapping. And I'm standing there like, this is the single most powerful moment of my life. And I don't know why exactly, but it was pretty incredible. It was the first time I had been recognized by that many Korean American adults. I'd been around campers, when I was a kid, but it was a pretty phenomenal moment. Looking back on it, I get pretty emotional thinking about it. So this just sort of set me on. Then I heard that podcast. It was nothing compared to that podcast line, right? And everything kind of just gelled together for me. And I just started doing the thing. I sent in the paperwork to Holt. I learned about this trip, this program. It's called Me in Korea, the Mosaic Tour for adults who are looking to go back and explore their country and heritage and do a birth search. And everything just sort of came together. And I found your podcast. I got connected with Michelle Lee. I got to talk to Susan Cox, the former president of Holt. I got connected with the Korean American Association. It's just like all of this stuff just sort of gelled and came together for me. And it's been quite a year. That's how I'll end that.
Well, I think that's all very amazing. That's one of the reasons why we were so excited to talk to you. You've said some things on your guest forum about, everyone taking their own speed and things that move them into discovery or at their own pace. And I really loved that you said that. And it's nice hearing what you're saying about it as well, is that some of these interactions that, helped kind of push you into that realm and that discovery zone. And I'm sure just people listening to this podcast will hear, wow, there's a Korean adoptee mayor. And I think that will inspire other people, maybe who are interested in politics or maybe interested in just, knowing that there is, more representation out there in rural Pennsylvania or in any of those. But you said you're actually an hour outside of Philadelphia, so it's not that rural, but how can you go over a little bit of your timeline of when you became a mayor, when you started looking into wanting to become a mayor? And
what got you into politics for sure?
Yeah.
That was,
Sure. Well, I just will preface all of this by saying I really think that I am the least political person ever. I told friends, they want me to run for mayor, and everybody just laughed at me. They laughed and laughed and laughed.
What terrible friends.
I know. I don't enjoy talking about politics. The whole, especially how divided the country is right now. It's maddening. So I wish I could tell you that I was setting out to represent and break the patriarchy, all this stuff. But the truth is, we moved to my current town, Royersford, Pennsylvania, and we had my son, and it was really important to our family, and it worked for us that I could stay home with him. He was a really good sleeper at 6 months old, and I was used to being in higher education, working, 40, 50, 60 hours a week, And we were new to the community, so it's not like I had that many friends, and I wasn't really that connected. So I used to be like, well, I can't can't do this one chore now because like, what will I do tomorrow? You know, I was just sort of in this space of looking at a baby all day, you know, he slept a lot. So this is literally how it happened. My husband was sitting on the couch one night and he said, "Oh, I see that they're looking for someone to be on Parks and Recreation for the borough." I was like, I could be like Leslie Knope. I could do that. Like, you know, I could help plan an Easter egg hunt.
I can do this. I can handle Ron Swanson.
Yeah,
exactly. You know, my husband kind of dresses like Ron Swanson sometimes. I mean, he likes it's all fitting together, guys. It's all fitting together.
He eats a party platter on his own. It's fine.
Exactly. So totally all about it. I got real nervous about this interview for this volunteer job when the gal who was on council, she's a good friend of mine now. We talked for like an hour because she was also from higher education. And unbeknownst to me, she went behind the scenes to talk to the other folks on council to say, I think I found someone who we could ask to run on our ticket to be mayor. So I didn't know what was going on. I thought this was all standard operating procedure. They're like, well, come on out, meet the president of council. And I was like, okay, sure. And so he said, oh, tell me a little bit about yourself. I did. And then he leans across the table and says, we were wondering if you would consider running for mayor. And, you know, had it been like an actual sitcom, you know, I would have done like a spit take, you know, the cornbread, the whole
thing. It went all over him because he leaned in close to tell you.
Yeah. He did. This was before COVID, so it was safe to do those things back then, you know, but it was just wild. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. To be clear, we are less than 5,000 people in my borough. There's like almost 1,000 mayors in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania because we have so many of these tiny boroughs. You know, and there's different classes of cities. I'm giving you all a little civics lesson. You know, so there's a lot of us, right? And I've, you know, become really close with a lot just in my county. And you can kind of do as little or as much as you want with the position when you're in a small borough. There's some really official duties that we have, but the rest of it is just like a lot of community building. You kind of do what you want. And I was so ready. It's like, I like supporting local business. I love supporting local nonprofits. You know, I'm all about being on social media all day and connecting with people. So I like planning events. You know, I'd worked with some public safety and done a lot of risk management in my prior job. And so, working with the police department and the first responders was excellent. So it's turned out to be a really fun fit. It's too bad it doesn't pay anything. So it's all just, you know, I literally get paid and like, you know, I'm blowing kisses to babies and
kissing babies. There you
cool.
go. That's your reward.
You know, I like babies. So that's how I literally started.
Ribbon cuttings.
Lots of I've yet to cut an actual ribbon though in my borough. Isn't that sad? I know. Soon.
Anyone listening?
I just imagine
open a business and
imagine you walking around, be like, I have these large scissors. Does anyone have any ribbon?
I have them. I'm ready. Exactly. So
can I put this ribbon up on your porch and cut it for when you go out the door? Please.
Is there anything we can celebrate with a ceremonial ribbon cutting? I have to use these scissors.
Someday.
Not to flex here, but I actually joined the Chamber of Commerce back in California just so I could do a ribbon cutting. Yeah.
So you've been able to cut a ribbon? Oh my gosh, Nathan.
From professional ping ponger to
I did. I got to cut one in front of my office.
Oh my gosh.
Now Patrick's like, oh, wait, I got to cut a ribbon now.
I have never cut a ribbon. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not good with scissors.
There you go.
So, did you stay in... Were you able to retain your job in higher education or did you have to step out away from that?
So I had left the traditional workforce to stay home with my son. That's why I had all this free time and energy. Yeah. So, and I got reelected this past November.
Congratulations.
I ran unopposed and still only got 89% of the vote. So I'm not saying that this still makes me sad, but I'm mentioning it, so it must.
Well, they'll know now. Yeah. Because we've said it here on the podcast.
Our world famous
was that they let that other 11% just not go out? Does it just know they didn't vote at all? Or
I would assume.
Yeah, that's probably what it was. My little box you had to check was like right down in the bottom right-hand corner. Maybe they were covering it. You know, who knows?
Still, hey, that's 90% of 5,000 people. I mean... Still a pretty good amount.
That's at least 1,000 people. So yeah, I math. It's fine.
Math.
It's great.
Okay. Oh, you're waiting on me? All right. Well,
Yeah, man. I just got off of work, so my brain is just dead.
So it's interesting that you become the mayor of your borough, and around a similar time frame, we're starting to see this rise in violence against our community and members of people who look like us. And then kind of around the same time, you're also starting to go through this really super personal identity journey. What was it like balancing all of those things? Did you have to like curb did it change the way that you approached your mayoral duties? I'm trying to figure out, how that all works together, because I feel like just going on my journey, just doing the journey was so much that I could not do hardly anything else. And that was the only thing I could focus on. And I'm not the mayor of a town. I'm not the mayor of anything.
I'm not responsible for kissing babies and dragging around these large ass scissors.
And that was difficult. So I can't even imagine how difficult that would have had to be to try and to go through all of that. And you speak so eloquently about it. And it's like, obviously you've come through this or are going through this in what seems to be a very, very well mannered way. That wasn't the right way to say that. Anyways, but I was just wondering how that balance was like for you at that time, and then how has that kind of changed going forward since all of that started?
Oh, I think that's a great question. And it definitely goes back to how do we have space in our lives to really think about these things. I mean, I have the benefit of being a stay-at-home mom first and foremost, so I can put in my earbuds, I can listen to you guys, I can be listening to a plethora of wonderful podcasts and resources that are out there. I mean, my kids, they just turned 3 and 6. I don't want to say they raised themselves for a whole year. I don't want anyone coming to arrest me, but I mean, they ate a lot of peanut butter and jelly for dinner, for a good 6 months. I found out about my birth family in February, and my trip was scheduled to leave June 20th. And so for that amount of time, I was calling people on the trip. I was connecting with other adoptees. I was trying to read. I was trying to listen. I've done a lot of things in life, not just being mayor, like I'm just going to jump in and do it and I'll figure it out later. And knowing that about myself, I really wanted to be very intentional about knowing I was going on this trip. So I didn't want to come back from Seoul and be like, oh, I saw this thing on Instagram. I should have done it while I was there. I mean, that's totally on brand for me. So I didn't want to do that this time. I wanted to really be intentional. And I had the benefit of going on this trip too with a good friend of mine, another Korean adoptee. She's the one who told me about the trip. So we got to go together. She lives in the next town. She actually grew up where I am the mayor, and she reached out to me on social media because she saw I was elected. She saw my face. She saw my Polish last name, and she just thought, there's a chance she was adopted. so we connected and actually got to go with her sister, non-biological, but they're sisters, they grew up together, another CAD. And so, it was a really busy time. I mean, there were moments, and I think you have said this before, Patrick, where I just needed to take a break. Like I got like a cold at some point in the middle of it. So I had to like sleep and not be thinking about it. And I realized, oh, I needed a break. I mean, I had just been taking the fire hose of information. And it's a lot. I did a lot of journaling. I did a lot of really simple light bulb moments like, oh, I never thought about that. My whole life, I'm going to be 40, all these things. And some of it was really heavy. I up until a year ago, I never thought about the possibility that folks are out there who didn't have a great childhood as adoptees. I never thought about any of some of the dark sides of that this was a business in Korea, and that, kids were sometimes taken off the street. All of that was pretty heavy to like learn about. So it wasn't just culture and history, which I'm still I don't have a lot of knowledge. I'm still trying to learn, plus all of my personal stuff. So to answer your question, I ignored my family a lot. That was 1. 2, I did have this moment of, I got to share my story. I'm a pretty open book, if you haven't already been able to tell. And at that point, I had enough rapport, I think, with the residents of Royersford, but also the general area, to just tell people. And the response I received was phenomenal. I mean, it was just so overwhelmingly gracious and kind. I just sort of shared a little bit. I think I shared, the original picture you get on your adoption files. Like, this is me. I was adopted. And I don't really open the conversation like that ever. I had this moment where I changed some of my bios and my social media to say, like, I'm a Korean adoptee. That was like a big day for me. Like, I'm gonna start owning this. Like, this is part of who I am. Whereas prior to that, I would have said, no, like woman first, mom, all those sort of other identifying things. But really being able to embrace and suddenly racialize myself and say, oh, this is who I am. This is great. And learning about that and, finding community, all the wonderful things that you guys talk about. Was really pretty cool. So yeah, I've been trying to share as much as possible. I was able to do a couple of small groups with parents of adoptees, online sessions. I had a mom say to me, thank goodness that you told your story, because we've been trying to get our son to like go to the camps and do that. He's not interested. And I said, that's normal. It's okay. Just sort of trying to, just be, and,
give him a hoagie. He'll be fine.
Give him a hoagie. Tell him he doesn't need to eat the Korean meal at the end of it. Bring him a hoagie. It'll be fine.
Forks are entirely acceptable. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's interesting how you end up passing that when you start having those conversations with like adoptive parents and other like younger adoptees and passing on that knowledge, especially because we've all been doing this for not that much period of time. Thank you for sharing all that. I really like that answer because in your guest form, I think you had written about when you started to do all of this work that you wanted to say yes to a lot of things. You didn't want to say no to a bunch of stuff. And like you talked about, look back and regret that you hadn't done that. And I think everything you shared is definitely an epitome of that, taking a chance on yourself. And, I think going on this trip specifically is that. Like, I think it's a huge deal to make that first trek back, no matter when you go, no matter what the circumstance is. And for you, it's like you just leaned right into it. For me, it's been like, just tiptoe, like, man, maybe I'll never go. And, I think hearing you share about how you got to that trip and why you wanted to go and what your motivation was, I think is really inspiring for me. And so I was hoping you could share a little bit about that first reaction you had to getting off the plane when you landed in Korea for the first time for this trip. And did that moment set the tone, or were you already prepped and locked and ready to go? I about said locked and loaded, and I did not like that. Getting away from all gun metaphors.
Getting away from violent language.
Yeah. Yes. Getting away from violent language. But were you ready to go
was
beforehand?
The 6 months prep good enough?
Was the 6 month prep good, or was that moment that you stepped off the plane? What was that like?
I will just say that it was so stressful trying to travel internationally during the COVID era. It was so stressful. And Korea does not mess around. I mean, you have to get that test. It's got to come back negative. You got to upload it into their thing. You got to get the QR code. It was really nice going on the group, and I'm hoping that your organization that you're going with, Patrick, will do the same thing. I mean, they gave us we didn't have to figure anything out on our own. It was, here's step-by-step instructions for how to do this, what to do, etc. And then we still had to make it through the trip without getting COVID, right? Because then you're quarantined for 7 days and you miss your whole trip. So it was super stressful. And so I was so, not to mention packing and buying gifts for people you've never met. And it was like preparing to move, which I know a lot of you have just done, and preparing for Christmas at the same time. It was, and trying not to get
and also just
COVID.
Going internationally, with a global pandemic. So it was real chill.
It was real chill, it was real chill. So being on the plane, I had a layover in Toronto briefly, and then it was 15 hours. And so I really had an opportunity to just sit and write and watch movies and just decompress. I wouldn't say that landing in Korea was the moment, but I'll tell you, the trip was really good about doing a nice mix of cultural and Min Young, who's the leader of the trip, has so many wonderful connections with all. So we went to Paju, we went to Incheon. There's sort of the main places in Seoul that we went to. And everywhere we went, we just received a warm reception. And I am not a highly emotional person. I'm more anxious than I am, a crier. How I cope is just to be anxious. But I will tell you that every time somebody welcomed us as Korean, I just started weeping. And reading, and I just kept thinking, okay, reading about this and listening to it is not the same as being there. When you are there, it is just an entirely different, when Korean people are looking at you and saying, welcome home. We're so glad you're here. We are so sad that you had to go away. Welcome to your culture. Welcome to being Korean. I mean, we went to Holt, we went to our agency, we did an agency visit. The official calligrapher of Korea was there giving us, all of us, our own stamps, which is if we were Korean, we would have a stamp that we would sign all of our official paperwork with. And so that's something like we don't have. And she gave us each one. She gave us a flat, all these. And you're just thinking, I never knew I wanted someone to say, welcome to being Korean, until it happened. And so every time it happened, I would just flood of emotions. And so I wouldn't say it was getting off the plane, but it was just sort of a nice progression of being there, being with other adoptees, building relationships with them, really simple things. You go into a lot of stores, there's only one size of clothes, which I didn't notice because I happen to be that size. But when I realized it, I was like, oh, there's no mediums, there's no large. I mean, if you go to an H&M, of course, they've got different sizes. If you go some of these smaller mom and pop shops, it's like, everybody is the same. I was actually pretty tall, I'm like 5'3". It's like, I'm like a good 2 inches taller than a lot of people, right?
What a dream.
I know. Patrick, I don't know what you're going to do. I mean, you're going to tower above everybody. It's going to be crazy.
Did you play basketball? So many times.
Yeah, I know, right?
The entire time.
Everyone's just going to take photos of him. They're just going to be like, oh, he's so tall.
He's so tall. Is he a K-pop star?
Is that Jeremy Lin?
I love how you said though that welcoming feeling of being there. I think that's I don't know if that's everyone's experience. I know that's kind of some of the experience I had too when I got there. I felt that welcoming, but it was more for me. It was welcoming from my family, so it was more of a family welcome than a Korean welcome. I'm curious when you were telling your story, Patrick, I think, was getting a little teary-eyed right there because I think he's thinking about his trip there and the welcome, if they're going to welcome him that same way.
You can't see these tears in my eyes.
I don't know. I saw you get a little glossy, but no, I'm wondering because that I think would be great. I think that is I don't know. I don't know what to say about that, but I don't know if that's like a desire or a dream or a hope that or something that's unforeseen. But I think that's something that is just, it's so warm and nice to hear that that's how you felt when you got there. And I hope that's like the experience for a lot of Korean adoptees who do go back because I do like Korea. I really appreciate, everything about the culture there and what I saw. So I'm glad you had a good time. I want to hear more though. So I don't know if the other guys have follow-up questions on that.
Well, yeah, I feel like I've got enough for about another hour. So, first off, I want to pull this out. You're talking about you got your stamps, and Nathan so very kindly when we went to Korea, we went to LA. They got us got us stamps, so that was very cool of him.
Taking care of you guys. Sorry.
But Nathan talked about because obviously you had a lot to do on this trip. It wasn't just about reconnecting with culture and going back to Korea. It was also part of reuniting and entering into reunion. Nathan talked about, when he went back, he went and it was a reunion trip. What was that experience like for you? Obviously, you talked a little bit in the beginning about some of the conversations that you had with your birth father.
You also said Appa, which I think implies a lot about how that goes. So yeah, I'm curious about that too. Because also hearing you say that and seeing your the structure, the bone structure of your face reminds me of Janet Kim from Kim's Convenience, which that is a character who hearing Appa come out of her mouth makes sense to me. I'm like, you could be cousins. And so in some way I'm like, that makes sense. But also wait, you're adopted. That's a what? So yeah, I would love to hear more about that.
Well, that is a very nice compliment. Thank you.
Of course. For the Honorable Mayor Jenna.
So it was interesting because, I sent all the paperwork, and Holt Korea and Holt USA are now two separate entities, which I did not realize when I went into this. And so I was working with someone through Holt USA, got my paperwork. It was everything that my mom had kept in record for me. So nothing was too surprising, except that it said right there, oh, you were born in Mokpo. I'm like, oh, okay, great. That's new, even though it wasn't. So a couple months went by, and one of my mentors on the tour, he was, calling a lot of us, checking in, making sure, working through, are you ready for this trip, et cetera. He also had a birth reunion, so that was pretty cool. He knew I was going on through all this, so he said, why don't you just message them again? Maybe they forgot about, see if there's anything else. And when you grow up with these forms that say unknown birthplace, unknown parents, you're like, okay. So I wasn't really it was not on my radar. I would submit the forms and I would just go about my life because you're not expecting to get anything. So it was the day after Valentine's Day. We're sitting on the couch. I'm a pretty true millennial. You leave me a voicemail. Maybe someday I'll listen to it. But I just happened to look and see that, I have we're getting ready to put the kids to bed. And it was someone from Holt Post-Adoption Services who essentially was like, hey, call me back as soon as you can.
Oh, that's not mysterious and creepy at all.
Yes. So that was a long hour of my life, trying to get the kids fall asleep. And so I could call him back.
Oh my gosh, that is anxiety producing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yikes.
I know you haven't had a home-cooked meal in months, but just, go to
Get
sleep.
over
It's
it.
fine. So I called him back, and what had happened was, I found out later, they contacted the reception center. That was on my records. It said, relinquished to Mokpo, but they had said on my records that it was the police who had done that. So I just always assumed, I was found by the police, and, well, that was not true. They contacted the reception center and I now have them in my possession because I got to go there. It said that it was my birth father who had relinquished me, and it had a whole history. It kind of said, they were unmarried. She left shortly after you were born. He struggled to take care of you. That's why. And so there were a couple things happening, because even when I got my paperwork, having now had babies, when you're reading like 4 lines about yourself, like, okay, slept through the night. I was like 7 months old when I was relinquished. Slept through the night, very healthy, eats very well. You're thinking, I was really taken care of. I mean, you don't know that when you're in high school, but if you've ever seen a baby sleep through the night, you're like, that took effort. Somebody helped get you to sleep through the night. So any piece of information I received just felt really good. Like when you're not expecting anything you get is, wow, I slept through the night. That's awesome. So then I hear, okay, it was your birth father. And the first thought I had to answer your question was, birth father, because I had to tell my husband, I'm sorry, Dave, but nobody ever thinks about the birth father. You're just always thinking about the birth mother, right? Like when we envision it, and you just picture a faceless lady in a hanbok, like going through the woods and dropping off a basket. It's very Moses, I know, but
it is very Moses. And then you became the Prince of Egypt.
That's right. No big deal.
Yeah, it's fine. We all have that story.
But one of the things, and I know this sounds really convenient to say now because I know all of this, but what he had left his basically equivalent of social security number. He left his name, his ID number. He left my birth mother's name, actually. And so here I am almost 40 years later, like hearing firsthand. And I was thinking to myself, this is somebody who wants to be found, right? You don't leave that kind of information, right? So then I had to do the whole, write a letter to him, pick 6 to 10 pictures to send. I take like 16 pictures an hour. So that was an interesting exercise. It was crazy.
You're doing that in Korea during that?
No, this was in February.
This was when you got the letter.
Was prior.
Okay,
my trip was in June, and I just at the same time was going through this birth search, knowing that I was going in June. So it just sort of all happened to work out. So then I sent it off, and they do a whole thing because the Korean government is now in charge of doing the searches. They can only do it if they have an ID number. So that was almost a near miss, right? So they were able, so they kind of send some vague letters because they don't know they don't want to blow up anyone's spot, right? But he got my letter on a Sunday, and he immediately called. was like, I know what this is about. This is about my daughter. I've been waiting for her. And then I had to wait like an excruciating week and a half to get a reply, which wasn't that long actually, but he wrote me this beautiful letter back. And so I wrote back to him and gave him my phone number because I thought, well, he can look up my Kakao Talk then, right? That'll be great. He called me on the phone. Like it was a Saturday or Sunday. I was actually at a charity event in Philadelphia. The music was like blaring. I see like a weird number. I kind of ignored it. And then as soon as I ignored it, I was like, oh, no, I can't be. So I'm like, I said to Dave, like, take the kids. Like I was trying to run away from the music on the phone.
Start the music.
Wait,
okay.
DJ, can you please turn down the music, DJ?
Amazing.
And it was just wild, So he doesn't speak a lick of English. I know 3 words in Korean. So basically the whole conversation was me saying, "Appa, appa. 안녕하세요, 아빠," and him saying like my Korean name and a bunch of other stuff. It was wild. And I have a couple friends who are, in the Korean American community. So I was able to reach out to them. And I called him back later. And I have a friend who was able to translate for me, basically. Like I put him on speaker, I put her on Zoom, and we kind of went through the whole thing. And so that was really pretty special. And then my half-sister found me like a couple weeks later on Kakao. And so before I got to go, I got to talk to him. We exchanged letters. I got his picture. She and I were communicating. She's 31. She had known about me for like a decade. So I was not a surprise to her, which was another thing you didn't ask, but I'm just going to tell you. Just through this whole process of hearing folks on your podcast say, well, I found out this, but because of this, and this, family is very hesitant to meet me, et cetera. So I was just very like expectant the whole time, trying to just live in gratitude. I got this letter. If he doesn't want to meet me, it's okay. I got this letter. Or, if I can't get, just trying to manage my expectations the whole time. And I just want to say to everyone listening, I understand that my story is very, very rare. But what I hope is that the only thing I want to say is that I almost didn't do any of this because my form said unknown, and it couldn't be farther than the truth. So I'm not saying you will find something. Obviously, many people don't, and it's very painful, and there's a long process, and it's waiting, and it's expectation, and it's a lot of emotion, and it's a crazy journey. But if the only thing stopping you is because you just think, I'll never find anything. If that's the only thing stopping you, but if you're ready to kind of go through whatever that possibility might be, I wanted to share my story because I went 40 years thinking, I'll never find anything. And now I've got an appa who's halfway around the world that I plan on seeing again next summer, and a half-sister and an aunt and an uncle and 7 cousins. And it's pretty phenomenal.
I feel like you're speaking directly to me right now.
Try not to be too heavy-handed.
Sometimes need to, yeah. I like it.
Amazing. The timing of that could not have been better. I think that's so lovely. And it's amazing how simple words like that, when you're adopted and you don't have that much backstory, can really define you. Just the idea of being unknown or things about you being unknowable. And I love, and your form that you filled out in March, apparently, saying like taking a chance on myself and saying things that I'm not going to find. You said you were a journaler and just have spent all this time like essentially trying to figure out who you are, and in some sense fighting against this sense of unknowability. And yet I just think that's really lovely to know that like you can in fact be known, and even though you may not ever know the whole picture, that shouldn't stop you from trying. And I think that your journey is one that's really lovely, because it's really, I think it is you not giving up, and that story of perseverance is something that's really inspiring. Also, you talk good, and I find like I don't really have any questions. I just want you to keep talking forever. And I think that's really lovely too. Just to hear, I think the opportunity that you have been able to take, and taking a chance on yourself on all of this exploration is so important. And even though we joked at 19, you're like, yeah, I'm in the world and I'm new to the world and the world is new to me and I'm figuring out who I am. But then even to be 20, I know how to math, 20-ish years on, and still doing some of those things, I think is really fun and helps find some rhythms and give, maybe courage is the word. Because one of the other things that I've been thinking of too is it's so much of your story is so informed by your upbringing and some of the chances and privileges that you've had that in some ways all four of us share. And I know that going back to Korea isn't necessarily a rosy thing, and yet this is still the place that we're reacting to, and just picking up all of these identities and trying them on and being like, is this who I want to be? Is this who I am, etc. So I'm curious, what's the balance of identities now? It sounded like earlier when you were younger, you were similar to me in that you had a clear sense of being ethnically Korean, but not Asian American or anything, or Korean American and any of that. But now, especially as you're technically in a political sphere, although it sounds like maybe just more political adjacent. But as a mother and a mayor and an Asian American and an adoptee, what's the balance of those identities and how does that shape who you are moving forward?
So somebody said, it was probably Brene Brown, because I love her. She said something like, love and compassion, it's not a pie. We can take on all of these things and still be whole. It's not like if one moves in, something else has to move out. So, I've always been very strong and I always joke, my whole career, I've been a young woman, which is going to start to not be true soon, I guess.
It's gonna go from a funny joke to a sad joke real soon.
Yeah, exactly. So, everything I've done throughout my career has been, wow, you're so young. And people don't say, oh, you're a young Asian woman. They don't leave, they leave off the last part. They just, but, so I think I've been used to being a little underestimated my whole life because of the way that I look. And so being able to really embrace a lot of these things has been pretty empowering. So the other day I was invited to go be and I really fought hard against it. It's like, who am I to say anything keynote speaker wise? But I got to be the keynote speaker at the Liberation Celebration for the 77th anniversary of with the Korean American Association. And so that was something that a year ago I would have been real scared to do.
Yeah.
Very imposter syndrome. How can I go and be amongst all of these people who look like me, but I don't feel like them? And now I certainly have a long way to go still, but just going and being welcomed by them and putting on the hanbok and really owning it and feeling like I belonged to it, feeling like I deserved to belong there. Which, to the outside world, I mean, I had to say a couple times in some mayor posts, I know this sounds crazy. I'm an Asian presenting woman. So to say that I'm for the first time really embracing it is going to sound crazy to all of you who are. And so there's this weird thing I've been wrestling with and thinking about, a stranger will come upon you. And even though they're a stranger, it's almost like they're seeing something in you that you haven't seen in yourself quite yet, which how can that be? It's us. How do we not know ourselves? And this is true for any form of identity development, right? I studied a lot of this in grad school, not related to me, of course, but other people.
Right. Never related to me.
I never thought about myself as being identity developing.
I was wholly formed at that time, but
exactly. So I think it's just like Brene Brown said. It's not pie. We can take it all on, and we can still honor all the other parts of ourselves that make us us equally.
Well, I really like that because one, I feel like I know exactly that feeling of being like, who am I to speak in front of this group of other Asian people? And I've never felt that way before. And then finding now especially over the last 3, 4, 5 months, that self-acceptance piece and being able to go in front of those crowds and not feel the pit in my stomach and being like, I don't belong here. That voices went away. And I think that's you sharing that, I think is so important because for the adoptee community specifically, no matter what where we're like ethnically based. For the adoptee community, we have to share our stories in that way when we're ready to, because people, while they see us, they don't really see us. And if they don't, if we're not sharing how difficult it is to finally say, I am Asian American, I am Korean, I am Indian, however you identify, however you embrace that. If we're not sharing that, then we will continue to be seen as just another adopted person and never given our full agency as somebody who's had to live a different Asian American experience. Because like when we're out on the streets still, when we're mayors, when we're at our jobs, we are Asian Americans. We are the people that we are outside of those things. And when we're out on the street, we are still these people. And so, especially within our own ethnic communities, if we're not sharing that with them and letting them know there is wildly different experiences to being this person or inhabiting and being a part and piece of this community, we're going to continue to be seen but not seen, or seen but not heard. And so, yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you for saying that, because I think we don't think about that enough. You know, we talk about our stories and we share them, and that's really great. And we do share, and especially because we do that within our own community, because we're trying to find or leave something for people who are coming out of the fog for the first time to be able to hold on to and grasp and embrace and find their way. But if we're really wanting to be seen, we have to have these conversations in front of our groups, in front of our different communities, the wider diasporas that we come from. And so by you doing that, and especially taking up the space of somebody in the political sphere, you know, I feel like that's something that you don't hear very much of at all, ever. And if we're going to have adoption things change, if we're going to make change in the industry, we have to have more folks like yourself who have the courage, who are able to use their privilege, whatever privileges they may have, to find themselves in these spaces where we can start to push for the actual changes that we need. Because that's the thing. I don't know. I can't name off one hand the number of elected officials who are also adopted. I can name a bunch of people who adopted children, but I couldn't tell you how many people are actually adopted who are working in legislation, which means that we're not represented at that level. And so if we want changes to happen, we have to start finding our ways there. And that starts by being comfortable in sharing our stories, finding our way to embracing who we really are, living and leaning into all of our identities, and then saying, yeah, I'm going to do this. So thank you. I don't know. I'm sorry. I talk a lot too.
That was an excellent monologue. That was wonderful. And I just seriously
for 20 minutes. And I gotta go though. Bye.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
You talked for a long time, and I paid attention to most of it. So it was coherent for about 80%. That was solid.
That's usually the last 20%. Really,
that's going to require minimal editing.
I was nodding.
I did see Nathan.
I agreed with it all.
Amazing.
Well, might have been more of a side to side, but
if Nathan is nodding off, then it sounds like it's time to go to a snack time.
Time for snack.
Time for snack.
So let's take that break right now.
Welcome back to the Janchi Show. Patrick's laughing already. I haven't even said
that's not what this segment is called.
We are back.
I just liked watching you go into it. I haven't been here in a while. We haven't done one of them together in a while, and see you go into it. That made me chuckle.
Okay. Well, we are here for food. We were here for the Honorable Mayor Jenna, but now we are here for food with the Mayor Jenna, the Honorable Mayor Jenna. So
I gotta be fast on that applause take.
I mean, as we were talking earlier, we discussed how Jenna was actually listening to some of our old shows and eating along with us. You know.
Oh shoot, is that true?
Same snacks, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and now you have that chance for real with almost like in person, you know.
And I'm in the room, guys.
You are here. So I'm excited that you are here for that. And that was an amazing interview. So thank you again. But I'm happy that you did get these snacks. I don't even know what they are. I just know they look like tasty, chocolatey pillows of goodness. So
tasty, chocolatey pillows
Mine's
Alrighty
completely in Hangul. I don't know. Let me take that back. It does say cereal chocolate cup on the back of mine.
Is that what the Hangul says?
Yeah.
Yes, the Hangul says cereal in green, and then the brown says choco. So we're in for a chocolate cereal. And then the subtitle up top says 맛있는 곡물로 만든. I don't know what any of that means. Well, that's not true. I know 맛있는 is flavor or taste. So something about flavor,
the chocolate
probably
flavor.
being chocolate and or cereal flavor. I don't know. I
don't know.
The picture of it makes me real suspicious, but chocolate cereals are super common. So I don't know why I'm feeling so like hesitant about the food, but I am. So.
Well, here's one of the reasons that's giving me some pause.
Also, it's a low tech product.
The number one ingredient is semi-chocolate. So is that like a 40% chocolate? Like, is it not a full chocolate? How do you get to full chocolate status? What makes you lose full chocolate status? I'm very confused. I don't know what semi-chocolate is.
Maybe it just means it's translated incorrectly. Maybe it just means semi-sweet chocolate, which is a thing.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Oh, I've never heard of that either.
Okay.
Semi-sweet chocolate,
very common
Oh, yeah.
in the baking
You need
world.
to
We
go
already know
bake
that.
some
That's
more.
canon.
Go
That's
watch
true.
some Bake Off.
That is true. I always find it amusing when it lists the things that I'm like, I've never seen in an American item. It says eggshell, calcium. Like they actually specifically say what the calcium is from, eggshell, which is interesting. But other than that, everything else seems, the standard chemical fare of preservatives plus some flour, some salt.
If this is anyone's first time listening to the food part of our show, they're like, "This is it's terrible.
Why do they
What are
do
you
this?
guys
terrible.
eating?
They're
They're
not
just
good.
reading the ingredients off of the package. It sucks."
To all my friends listening, just give the show another chance. Give it another chance.
I'm so sorry.
It looks
started
really good.
all
I mean,
this.
if we had video, it looks good. It looks like what are those things called? Those wheat pocket
Wheat
cereals.
Thins? Or
No, the
pocket
wheat ones.
cereal.
Frosted mini wheats.
Frosted mini
But
wheats.
they're
So it
hollow,
looks-
hollow
Oh,
on the
yeah,
but
outside.
this one's hollow with chocolate on the inside. That's what it looks like. But
Okay.
it's made by Lotte, by the way. We forgot to mention that.
Okay,
I
just
say
said
we
it.
dig in. Just
That's
dig
fine.
in.
Well, so here's the deal. So I opened it like a normal box because like I just moved into a house. But then there's also this like flappy thing that says open. Cool. But then there's
got it.
on the package it says open. It points to the sides. So I actually don't know how to open the actual thing to eat the thing.
I bet
besides
you grab it like this.
So open it like an American, I guess.
Or maybe you
I don't
smash
know.
it together.
And for
I just
anyone
watched
looking
the
at
She-Hulk
the store,
pilot.
there are different boxes. You guys have the rectangle box. I actually have a cup, so it looks like a cereal cup.
It smells chocolatey.
So if you're looking, they also have those, and mine has no packaging other than the top lid.
Oh, weird.
Oh, you guys have already broken into them.
I'm already in it. Already
yeah.
there.
I'm already eating some chocolate, some
Hey, I'll say
semi-chocolate.
These do not look the same as they do on the box. They're a little bit wider.
No.
I was
They're
just gonna
significantly
say
more
that.
frosted. Yeah.
the picture makes it look like there's going to be like a lava of chocolate in the inside, right?
and the darker
I like
color
that
makes it look
description.
more wheat healthy. Like this looks like a
Yeah.
Yeah. Chocolate isn't oozing out of mine every time I
No.
bite.
Oh, look, I even have one that's hollow. Feel ripped
Oh,
off.
man. What a ripoff.
You need your money back.
I would
It's
write
not
to Lotte.
bad. It definitely tastes like
It's not
cereal,
bad.
but not
I know.
in a
I want to
bad
add
way.
milk. I wonder if anyone adds milk to this.
It tastes
Yeah.
like
Like
they're like a
Cheerios.
cereal, like a churro cereal, like it's like a Chex Mix, but like a cookies and cream Chex Mix or something.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's a good
The
description.
chocolate's good though. It's a good quality chocolate. I feel like it's
It's
not,
no Cookie Crisp.
no.
That's
But
a
it's not
good
bad.
semi-chocolate,
It's an excellent semi-chocolate.
not too sweet, which I now know is what that means.
I'm really curious. I'm going to save some of this and add milk to it later.
2 servings per container. All right.
There's
Yeah.
2 servings in this bag.
Yeah. So that's pretty calorie dense for a traditional Korean snack.
Mhm.
That's true. Usually 1 calorie or 1 calorie.
Yeah. I don't know.
One
I think it's
serving
good.
size.
I'm running out of things to say besides it is exactly what it is branded
Yeah.
to be, which is kind of impressive, but that means I don't have any hot takes.
Right.
The taste is what I expected for sure. So,
Yes.
Jenna, you've heard our shows. We rate things from 1 to 5. You can give
How many
it whatever.
semi chocolates do you give it
Yeah.
out of 5?
I particularly enjoy when you guys rate how easy it was to get into the package. That always cracks me up. It was very easy to open this package. I appreciate that. I also like that you could probably reuse the box for little Legos or things.
I literally was thinking the exact same thing.
Nice.
Like, what can I use this box for?
I can't because I opened it like a fool, but it's fine. Some tape would fix that.
But if you don't open it like a fool, like KJ did.
If you're not an idiot like KJ,
He'll recycle.
That's how you know you're a longtime listener. Because longtime listeners who come onto the show, they're like, "We're already best friends, and I'm already throwing shade." I'm like, "No, that's appropriate."
I would give it a solid 4.5 out of 5.
Really?
Cheerios.
Okay.
I like that it's not too sweet.
Good.
It's crunchy. It loses half a point though because the box makes it seem like the chocolate's going to be a little more
brown,
liquidy,
A little more lava-y.
Yep.
Yeah,
a little more
lava-y.
lava-y.
She expected a lava of chocolate, and I was like, I love that.
Interesting. All right, Patrick, what about you, man?
So it tastes good, but I think I'm gonna give it a 3.5, maybe a 3. I'm 3.25, and I'm saying that because I liked your description, KJ, that it was exactly what it is advertising itself to be, essentially. But that's it. The last snack that we did together, I gave it a 2.5. Right down the middle of the road.
You went right down the middle and you went 2.75. Is what you said.
Yeah, that was when I went down the middle at 2.75, the half of 5.
I was dying when I was listening to that.
That's how I feel about this snack, is why I brought that up. But I think it's just a little bit better than middle of the road. So that's why I'm going 3.25. Semi-chocolates.
Okay. Well, I like it. I agree with Jenna. It's a good chocolate. It's a good crunch. I'm going to give it a 4.5 as well. I might bump that up when I add milk to it. Even though it's probably not supposed to be a cereal, even though it does say cereal chocolate cup. That's probably the worst cereal for you is to eat.
This would not be a good balanced breakfast
cookies.
party.
Yeah, exactly.
Again,
this would not be healthy.
Cookie Crisp. Also part of this, a part of what, how does it say in the 90s? Part of this balanced breakfast? Part of every kid.
However, I feel it would be good. Either putting it in milk or putting it on top of ice cream. So I'm going to still give it a 4.5.
All right. I am with Patrick on this. It's entirely as advertised, or rather Patrick is with me on this. It's entirely as advertised. Here's the deal though. I will say, like, when you hear chocolate cereal, I think you think of one thing. But when I was reading, maybe it's just because my Korean is bad, but in this, I imagined cereal flavor, if that was a thing, and also chocolate flavor, like separately. So it's not chocolate cereal flavor. It is cereal flavor and chocolate flavor. And this nails both of them in equal parts. And it's more pleasant than I don't know, just like eat like dry Cheerios and that like flavor.
Cereal. There's a lot of cereals out there. I'm just saying.
No, I think specifically something in the dry, like mildly healthy, whatever.
Like Life.
Sure, yeah.
That's my favorite cereal.
So I think it's like
Life.
All right.
I swear.
I think it's just like it is what it is, and it's something about it is just like a little bit more like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So it's like it's a little more than average, but because it's entirely average, I'm also going to give it 3.5. I think it's fine. It's good. I wouldn't rush to the store, but they nailed the advertising. Besides it, the one being browner and the other being more pale. So maybe the ones on the inside need to see the sun, and that would fix most of the problems. Who knows?
Or maybe the ones inside were extremely old and they've lost some of their coloring.
Oh, that's real sad. It's become a tragic. This is the tragic tale of Cereal Choco by Lotte. Well, Jenna, thank you so much for coming on the show. That is the end of our food portion. And now
everything I wanted it to be and more.
So she would give being on the show a 3.5. That's fine. You don't have to rate us on air, but you do have to rate us off air in iTunes, or I think Spotify doesn't do ratings anymore. I don't know. Jenna, where can people find you? Stars. Is there a thing that you want to promote or raise awareness of? I don't know. Plug yourself and ways to connect with you here.
You want more people to move to your borough in Pennsylvania?
I would just say if you're in the greater Philadelphia area, Western Montgomery County at all, and you want to connect, even if you're not, I've met all of my Korean adoptee friends. We have found each other through Instagram in the area. I had a bunch over. That's Paul came over one time, your previous guest, and we just hang. We just hang and we talk and we eat, and it's a good time. And I'm happy to talk to anyone. Also, I'm home all day with my kids and happy to have a distraction. I'm constantly messaging Patrick like, "Hey, how you doing? You want to talk?"
I'm a terrible messenger on Instagram too, so I apologize.
But yeah, you can find me at Mayor Jenna PA on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Although I don't tweet very often, you can find me on LinkedIn, Jenna Antoniewicz. I have a website that's connected to the stuff we do in town. You can see all the food that I'm eating and a little bit about my journey there. It's royersfordrecreation.com. And there's a Mayor Jenna portion there. So you can see some pictures and stuff. If you're interested in seeing my Appa and my sister Unji and other things. So anyone can reach out to me. I've connected to quite a few people from just, looking them up on Instagram after hearing about them on your show. So I've made some friends that way too. Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Your show's awesome, and I love it.
Well, we love that you were gracious enough to give us your time on the show. And you and I will definitely be having conversations soon. If you want to have conversations with the rest of us, though, you can do that collectively at Janchi Show on all the social media platforms. You can also send us an email to janchishow@justlikemedia.com. You can also leave us a voicemail at 972-677-8867.
Speaking of which, Jenna, how do you pronounce the word ROOF?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask me. It's roof.
It's roof. But also, did you hear what I was talking about in the episode?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Just vigorous head nods. All right. So if you specifically want to call in because you are either for or against a specific pronunciation of the word ROOF, not RROF. That's a different word. ROOF. Just call in to that number, 972-677-8867, and just leave how you pronounce that word. And then you don't even have to say anything else. You don't have to say hello, goodbye, long time, for whatever. None of that. Just how you pronounce that word would be fantastic.
Has anyone called and left a message about it yet?
Yes. Well, one person has called about that. One person has called and left an actual voice message where they have a question for us, which we will get to on a solo show. Yeah.
Ooh.
So we're excited for that. Anyways, all right. Continuing on, email janchishow@justlikemedia.com. You can go to janchishow.com. Yeah, to support the show. The /support is the way to do that. And then you can connect with us individually. I'm at KJ Roki, wherever I want to be found on the internet.
I'm N Nowak on Instagram. You can also check out our Facebook after party.
Oh, yeah, right. Man, shoot. All right.
And you can find me on Instagram at Patrick in the World. You can also find me on LinkedIn at Patrick Armstrong. I am the Asian one. You also heard last week that we announced our Janchi Live that is going to be October 22nd, the week of the 22nd, I believe. Way
to sound confident about that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's okay. We know what we're doing.
In Carrollton/Dallas, in the most Korean area that we could possibly find. So
That's not LA or New York.
Yeah. So you'll have more details about that soon, or we will have those details for you soon. But just wanted to throw that back out there as well. And again, thank you so much, the Honorable Mayor Judge Jenna Antoniewicz.
Not judge, but not a judge yet.
Oh. You heard it here first. Janchi exclusive. Oh.
Janchi exclusive. Love it.
Well, we really appreciate you coming on the show. Hopefully we can have you back again sometime soon to talk more about other things. But until that time and until next week, we have been the Janchi Boys and Janchi. I missed it. My timing was off. You started it too soon.
Oh no! It's fine.
Now we're drowning.
Whatever. Now we're drowning. That seems ridiculous. All right. Just gonna let it fade out. Woo! Now it's done. Oh shoot! Now it's looping. Gosh dang it.